Industry Inner Join, uplifting data literacy across Australia and bringing conversations from data leaders straight to your ears. Get the insider information. My name is Douglas, former data analyst, now founder of GR Analytics Recruitment, and we're about to hear from one data leader. Welcome.
I'm all yours. Thank you.
Bobby Patel, GM of Data and Analytics at RAC. Welcome to the fifth episode of the Industry Inner Join podcast. Lucky number 5. From web developer 20 years ago to GM of Data and Analytics now. In 200 seconds or less, tell us a little about your career and how you've come to where you are.
Yeah, wow. So yes, I started off as a developer. I have a degree in computer science and mathematics at the time. I did graduate during the dot-com bubble in 2001, 2002, when technology jobs were hard to find. But I managed to land a role as, developing web systems at the time of a small company here in Perth. And part of that was, how do you use technology, in order to help businesses sell stuff online? So I ended up building an e-commerce solution, but I had more fun picking up the phone and talking to people about how to use it. And I guess over time and throughout my career, so from there I ran a small news agency with my parents. I did my MBA as well at that point in time, so I ran retail. I went to IINet and I held a number of roles, from business analyst to commercial analyst to actually leading an on-site services rollout nationally for the company, to doing analytics roles at HBF, WAFA, and now RAC. And the thread in all of that has just been the ability to use data, information, and your stakeholder engagement skills to really help people understand, here's what technology can do for you, here's what the data is saying, here's where the opportunities lie. That's been consistent throughout all those roles, despite so many aspects of tech changes over the last 20 years.
You've been a part of the dot-com boom. Are you seeing any...
Or bust.
The bust and boom. Are you seeing any correlations between what we have with AI right now?
Yeah, I guess I was very young at the time, I guess, during the dot-com boom. But yes, there is a correlation. The correlation is the huge amount of excitement that people get, and then inevitably the huge amount of disappointment, once it doesn't quite work. And typically that's where people haven't experimented correctly. They've jumped ahead in terms of the technology when there's so many other aspects that they need to focus on. A huge aspect of what we do at RAC is actually fixing our data landscape and understanding where the quality of our data lies before you apply AI over the top of it. And no doubt, I think, like any boom bust cycle, there will be pain. But the companies and I guess the teams and the people who come out on the other side are people who've just experimented well, failed quickly, learned a lot, and implemented, to the best ability of technology, people, process, and data, not just focusing on the buzz of AI. So yeah, there are huge similarities in that cycle. But even through the dot-com bust, we still have Microsoft today. You can see similarities, but equally the pace of change of AI these days is nothing like we've experienced before. And it's really changing now, the roles that are in market, especially for aspiring people in data engineering and analytics, and what you can do with these tools is, wow. I mean, I wish I had access to some of this stuff when I was an analyst back in the day. It's mind-blowing.
How are you seeing that change? I did see RAC advertised for an AI lead recently.
Yep. But
I think more importantly, how do you think it affects the data analyst, the data engineer, the data scientist in their day-to-day?
Yeah, I think I'll tell you a bit of a story. I guess when I I'm originally from Kenya, and I came here to finish high school. And I remember doing my TE at the time, which was the entrance rank exam before you go into university, right? We were the first year where we were allowed graphical calculators. And everyone, was saying, oh, well, you've got it easy. You can bring this device in and it can do all this stuff for you, and therefore, the exam's really easy for you. But actually, the problems were a lot harder. So it wasn't that it was any easier. Actually, we were solving more complex problems because we had technology to help us iterate through that, and take out some of the more mundane tasks when it came to writing your physics exam or your mathematics exam. I think we're in that same car. So what I'm seeing in terms of usage of AI tools is it is helping us solve more complex problems. And so, with engineers and analysts, how do you use AI to automate, the mundane, the day-to-day, but also how do you use it to explore new ideas, new scenarios? You can plan so many things now, through a range of tools that would take you months, I guess, prior if you had to do all of that manually. And so how do you use the tools to your advantage in helping typically a business understand their landscape, run scenarios, run sort of models and efforts to say, right, this is the outcome you might get if these sorts of assumptions are met, right? Like I see huge potential in narrowing that down. I personally use, AI quite a bit in financial planning for myself and my family. As a data guy, I've got 11 years of every cent and expenditure, off my family in a database, right? And so typically in prior, there's lots of manual effort to extract that, find trends, tell my wife how many shoes she buys every month and how we're not affording things. But
how many new soccer boots for
correct.
you as well?
That's right. Yeah. But through AI now, I can plan for those things far better and run scenarios and say, we're here today, but if we wanted to get to this stage, what are all the things that could happen? What are all the things that could go wrong? Help me plan. And a huge part of a data analytics team in a business is about strategic planning. So it's not just about, typically you get loads and loads of people who are really ingrained in the technology, right? Like we do data engineering really well. But a good team is not about having a huge amount of talent in data pipeline management. It's actually a team that can be an internal consultancy, and that's a big aspect of how we run at the RAC. We're a consultancy. People come to us with their business problem. Hey, we want to grow revenue. We want to reduce cost. We want to, look at launching a new product. And we help them actually determine what the best decision may be in solving those problems by using the data we've got access to, our analytical skills, including data governance as well, to assess whether, have we come to the right conclusion based on the underlying data foundations that we may have. And it's a combination of all of that, right? And then critically, and I must say this to aspiring data analysts, your soft skills play a huge part, in your journey. And that ability to connect at, a really day-to-day level with businesses, ability to influence outcomes is such an important aspect of the role that I see today, right? And none of that's going to get replaced by AI because that is fundamental to human connection and allowing me to help you work through a problem. So use the tools, but use the tools to your advantage to help people solve problems.
I agree. I hear hiring managers say that time and time again.
Yeah.
What does that's about your team, but I'd love to hear, what does a day in the life look like for a GM of data and analytics?
Yeah, I guess
Bobby Patel's day in a life or a typical week.
And it has, I always wish that I could spend more time problem solving, I guess, as the GM of analytics across RAC. And, my portfolio ranks with, we've got a group analytics function, which looks after most of the businesses. We've got an insurance dedicated function. We run multi-platform in terms of a Microsoft instance and a Databricks instance, depending on which business we're serving. And a governance function that looks at data quality, data management, data lifecycle management, and all the rest, in terms of maintaining a good, healthy data estate. And then we've got all our project demand as well. So a day in the life for me typically revolves around attending board meetings, providing updates, but then syncing with the team around planning and problem solving. And I actually wish I could do more of the latter because that's, it's exciting. It's fun to sit down and hear of all the problems. But really championing data as an asset across RAC and why, it is important to lay good foundations, influencing at the exec level around why we should invest in certain things. We've got a massive program underway today called our Program Guardian, which is a big investment in data management. We're improving things like consent practices, privacy practices, data quality, and all the rest through this program. For me, it's really important that we can connect with business leaders for them to understand the benefits of these programs, and it's been great that they're willing to invest. So my time spent a lot in influencing, I guess, helping the business understand where the data team could fit in and how it could help them, deliver better products and deliver better member experiences across the business. But then equally, problem solving with the team, which is just such a great aspect of what we do.
A lot of data analysts out there are operationally working in Power BI dashboards, for example. What are the priorities, and they may not see this, what are the priorities at an exec and C-suite level? What are the conversations like when it comes to data?
Yeah, I think, typically with senior management and C-suite, it's data that's used to make decisions. So are we on the right track in terms of a particular product or a business unit or, a particular segment in the market or geographical segment? What's happening? Why is it happening? What can we do about it? What does the future tell us? What are my roadblocks? What are my blind spots? What am I not seeing, right? How do I manage risk? Those are the conversations that happen at an exec and board level, right? So for us, it's really about how data plays into that. So, and then you work backwards from there in terms of, right, how do we build pipelines and visualizations that actually answer those questions? It's such a fundamental aspect of how we work. So our team, we're not siloed data engineers and analysts working separately. In fact, we cross-pollinate with common squads around a particular business domain or problem. So we have, for example, a marketing squad that's dedicated towards, hey, let's help you understand how campaigns are performing, how digital performance might be tracking, what are the questions you would come up with? And then how do, again, we work as an internal consultancy to build engineering skill sets, lay the data governance foundations, and then apply analytics, visualizations, and even modeling and AI to actually answer that particular question. Because without that tie-in, you can have the best analytic skills, but your efforts are largely wasted if you're not answering a business problem today.
Not solving the business problem.
And equally, a huge part of that is you have to work in tandem with the business. If someone comes to you with a question today around a problem they have today, but you can only answer it in 3 months' time, well, that's not going to work. They have that problem today. So how do you help them solve that today? And it's never a perfect world. You never have perfect data. But what can you do to support that particular person through that problem they're trying to solve today? That's a huge aspect of how we operate within the team.
Problems and people. That moves into, I guess, who in the team you've hired recently. What are the key attributes you look for in a data engineer or a data analyst?
Yeah. Two things I'm really proud of. One is our hiring has been very effective. Our attrition rates are very, very low across the team over the last few years, at least 3 years that I've been at RAC. And when we hire, we like people who understand our tech stack, obviously, and we're very in the Microsoft ecosystem at the moment across our data platform and the use of Power BI, for example, in terms of visualizations, and we use the Azure OpenAI suite for some of our generative projects. And we've got a Databricks instance for our insurance business. However, as I said, there's 3 main components we look for, right? So do you have really good mathematical and statistical skills if you're an analyst? Because that is core. That is, you have to be able to understand the foundations of how you get to answers. Do you have software engineering coding skills? Because that is such a huge aspect of being a well-rounded analyst today. But a huge element we look for is EQ, the ability to have a conversation, the ability to connect with people, discuss ideas, and influence. And that's a big aspect of what we do look out for people in the team, because in my experience, as you know, the technology landscape changes all the time. It's it's Microsoft today, and someone else is using it's vast. A lot of those skills can be transferable, but if you don't have the ability to influence and connect and share your ideas in a way that business users and leaders understand, then all those great skills you've developed, in terms of hard skills on technology and maths, are largely wasted. So you have to have the ability to talk and connect with your peers, share ideas, influence outcomes.
How would you advise someone to develop those skills? And I guess for yourself, how did you develop to where you are now, where a lot of your work is communication and influencing, like you said?
Yeah, I guess a lot of it is practice, but a lot of it is finding those opportunities where you can actually go out and present your ideas. Do stuff like this, come and get interviewed, ask a bunch of questions. There's so many different aspects with in university. I remember finding my own pathways of just trying to get out there in terms of, hey, how do I help you with this problem? Now let's sit down and really understand it. How do we then discuss what data and elements feed into helping to solve that and being part of the solution, right? So finding those opportunities to work with a diverse range of talent and groups is a good way to practice building those skill sets, finding the opportunities to just connect and share your ideas with people, whether it's a large or small audience. I think is a good way. For me, I think it's probably always come naturally, and I know sometimes personality plays into it. But like I told you on the example of I was a graduate web developer, but I had more fun picking up the phone saying, hey, here's how you use my product to sell your furniture online. Would you like to buy it? And then helping people actually through that journey was far more rewarding for myself than actually just building the tech. So yeah, I think for me it's practice those skills, do it with your colleagues, do it, if you're at uni, do it with your peers and group assignments. Take up the opportunities to actually present your work in class. I know there's so many opportunities for that, right? Go to industry events. You put on a range of industry events. Go to some DR industry events. Talk to people, right? Share ideas. It's a great way of networking, and it's a great way of practicing your communication skills.
I'm going to plug our Toastmasters that we host as well, which I think is a great avenue.
Absolutely.
Well. Have you ever done Toastmasters?
I've never personally done Toastmasters. I know plenty of people who've done Toastmasters, but again, use those opportunities because Toastmasters is a great way of again practicing your comms so many other opportunities as well. Yeah.
I like the acknowledgement that communication, there is a inherent skill some people have, but also there's a skill you can develop over time as well if you put effort into it.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's somewhat of a myth, I think. Some people think you have it or you don't have it, but you can develop it.
No, you can develop it, yes. And, even over my career, you have to learn the different aspects of communication. So how we communicate to, and communicate our ideas to technical people or business people is very different. And so how do you hone in on that? But again, just lots of practice. Just do it over and over again. And I'm sure, yes, you're right. You can develop those skills.
I want to take you back. Bobby Patel, but you're now graduating in the modern day. So you're coming out of uni with your computer science degree now. What do you think you'd be learning, and how do you think you'd be either breaking in or growing in the data field?
Yeah, it's a really interesting question. Actually, I've been talking to a few CIOs in Perth that, have kids that are maybe a graduate. My daughter's 8 at the moment, so it's still some time for me personally. But I know people in, huge technical roles in Perth that have kids that are on that journey, and they're really struggling with how they actually, how do they advise their children around what path to take if you've just graduated with a computer science degree? I think for me, having a curious mindset, developing one of the big things we do within our team and technology at RAC is a concept called the growth mindset. And if you read one of Satya's books, Microsoft really, lean in on this concept of growth mindset. And it is about development. It is about learning. It is about, not just the outcomes that we achieve. A key part of how we operate in the team is we share learnings, especially where things go wrong, especially where things fail. To me, having that curious mindset and learning is a constant, right? And that's something that you will always have with you. I'm always, even today, learning about new concepts and new ideas. So my advice to anyone who's graduating within this field today is keep learning, keep applying what you've learned into targeted problems that, help leaders actually solve, right? And as long as you can make those connections, it's never about the technology that you use. Some companies are deep in one stack, and that's fine. You become an expert in that stack and you move to another company, it's a completely different stack, right? But the foundations and the concepts are largely the same, right? And what's, always a constant is the growth mindset, the ability to say, hey, like, what did I learn today? What outcomes did I achieve? What went wrong, and how can I, use that in terms of a better outcome next time? That's a constant. That's absolutely a constant. So keep learning is my advice. How do you use, so back to my earlier point, how do you use the technology of today to your advantage, right? You could use AI to halve the time in terms of some of the insights that someone else might be able to produce. That's a key competitive advantage. So learn how to use that to your advantage.
How do you stay up to date with everything? Because there's too much going on, but where do you read? What do you read? How do you know what to read?
So I read a lot. I tend to subscribe to things that I have interest in, subscribe to things that may kind of lead me into understanding some of the changes that are occurring in today's world. So lots of like AI podcasts and stuff that I listen in on. Obviously, there's just loads from the technology landscape. I do a lot of HBR. Historically, when I was doing my MBA, it was a huge aspect of understanding real case studies of how companies have solved problems and how they solve problems, right? So I do read a lot of use cases, a lot of case studies, and I dissect them. I actually sit down and go, right, what was the problem? What was the management response? How did that come about? How did they then use data to then hypothesize and say, hey, okay, this could occur if we undertake this path. So I do a lot of that, but I also talk to a lot of people. I go out there. A huge aspect of my role, especially internally, is going out talking to all business leaders. We run 8 different businesses at RAC, right? So I'm never going to be an expert in all those businesses, but going out, even with a patrol, on the road, learning about how do they, fix someone's car or change a tire or even rescue a baby from a hot day when they've been locked in a car. Like all of these things is a learning opportunity, right? Because I take that back to the team. I go, right, how do we actually help them plan better for that? How may we anticipate which baby might be locked up in what car, in what suburb on a hot day, right? And proactively send a patrol van to those suburbs. These are the kind of ideas that keep flowing when you connect with people. And so, it's a huge aspect of keeping up to date. You can like I read a lot, but I get a lot of information. But just going out there and experiencing other people and how they work.
A lot of people would say they don't have time to read. Where do you find time in your schedule?
It is difficult. Again, I ashamedly also use AI to summarize a lot of content. And my role does involve lots of internal reading as well. Lots of papers to write, lots of things, lots of committees to sit on, and all the rest. But I always focus on what's important today. What do I need to understand in order to what's my priorities, right? Do I need to solve this problem today, or is this something that I need to kind of use in the background and kind of keep developing my skills. And that helps me prioritize, like, content-wise, what I should look at. Equally, I think, I take some time out. So every week I take a little bit of time out and say, right, this is, let me go and think about an idea and just go and see, okay, like what books, what newsletters, what things, sort of feed into this. And I'll spend a little bit of, maybe an hour, 2 hours a week just delving into a topic and, trying to get as knowledgeable as I can.
Going to mindset as well, from data analytics manager at HBF, chief analytics officer, WA Primary Health Alliance, GM at RAC, what mental models have served you in approaching problems and using data as well?
That's a great question. So I think for me, typically there's a lot of the standard kind of strategic aspects of how you deal with these things, right? So in every situation, whilst the domains are different, HBF sold health insurance, WAFA were a behind-the-scenes organisation doing funding for healthcare services across the state, and RAC obviously are a conglomerate, and they're from selling insurance to roadside products to home loans and roadside patrols and home security products and even solar panels. Now we're kind of a range of businesses in one. There's always the constant aspect of business strategy in each one of those, right? So what is the business trying to achieve, right? In any one of those, it's either we need to grow our customer base, we need to increase membership, we need to retain more people, we need to reduce costs, we need to find new revenue sources. We need to kind of, how do we become way more productive in the things that we're running? How can we, optimize our workforce? How do we support our internal employees so that they can do more for our customer base and our member base? All of those are constant. So I always start at what is the business strategy, right? Because once you understand that, then it's a sequencing in terms of the range of kind of, strategic aspects you would use to really understand, okay, what are the priorities in that problem? So say, for example, one aspect that we have is we want to increase our membership base. How do we do that? Where do we over-index or under-index in terms of the membership base today in WA, right? Where are our opportunities? Are they the right opportunities in terms of the right product mix? What does the data then tell us across all of that, right? So it's a way of then, in my mind, going backwards from the strategic problem to really understand the insights that I need in order to achieve results for that problem into then, do I have the data, right, to help me produce the insights? And then it leads to, a whole bunch of scenario planning. And I'm big into scenario planning. Because scenario plans help me understand, right, if I pull these levers, what would the expected outcome be, right? So if I go and target a specific segment and that increases, but what happens to my cost profile? What happens to my membership profile? I can test for all of that. And this is where AI is such a huge opportunity, because I can run thousands of scenarios today, right? Rather than only being able to run 2 or 3 in the past. And I can use all those scenarios to really go to a business leader and say, I think this is the right outcome in this mix, given the history that we have within this space. It's a very simple example, right? But always start with the business problem, work backwards from the strategic problem at hand to then understand the insights and the data aspects that's required to do the analysis for those particular insights, right? And then how does AI and all the rest of the tooling help you answer that problem? That's a method that's always worked for me, irrespective of any of the roles that I've had over time.
How does that correspond to the data analyst at BHP, a 40,000 person organisation? How do they get to the business strategy? Is it ASX reports? Is it the strategy of their head of or direct line manager? What do you advise to them?
Yeah, I mean, so obviously really understand your business if you're working. If I was an analyst in BHP, yes, I'd be reading, all the public information in terms of what is the business and how does it operate today. But equally, I'd be talking to a whole range of people, right, to help me understand, and BHP are obviously such a large diversified miner. Understand the business, go out and talk to people. Hey, what does it take to run a mine site, to actually extract this stuff? What are some of the opportunities to either do more, do less? Like, a huge part of it is having a curious mindset and being able to find those opportunities to go and learn, right? And learning doesn't only come from what's given to you in terms of paper and pen. A huge aspect of that is going out and experiencing what it is to do that person's role. So, for me, if I was an analyst at BHP, those are the avenues that I would take to really understand, right, this is what it means. This is how the business operates. Here's some of the strategic drivers. And then go back and go, how do I help them solve those problems?
That comes back to your curiosity as the key attribute.
Absolutely.
As well.
Yeah.
Going after the business.
Correct. Always having a curious mindset.
Jumping back to RSE, what you can share about some AI initiatives you are doing, that would be great to hear about those so people can understand what's under the hood.
Yeah, absolutely. And so, a huge buzz these days, Douglas, as you know, is generative AI. But I'll tell you, like, some of the statistical models and these are things we did at university 20 years ago, right? None of that has changed. The maths hasn't changed. And generative is simply a concept of deep learning in machine learning, which is the suite of artificial intelligence. It is not new. It is just that it's come leaps and bounds, much exceeding expectations in terms of the technology of at least of the last 2 or 3 years. We run a range of AI projects, from very simple traditional AI, so things like next best prompting, things that take an input and have a outcome or an action or a score, right, assigned to it, and could be, what products are next best for this particular customer or member. It could be ranking people who are highly likely to claim in terms of some of the insurance aspects. It could be really just understanding which scenarios may play into helping reduce cost, for example. So we use a lot of traditional AI. In fact, probably hundreds of models that exist within our data landscape that help solve those problems. And then within generative, look, it is new, but we've got at least one production instance today of a model that helps our insurance team improve the speed and accuracy of how they respond to contact with membership. So at any one point in time, those teams could receive hundreds or thousands of communications, right, in an hour. And so how do I quickly sift through that and determine what's important? What can I respond to today? Typically, those teams are bound, right? You've only got X number of people who can respond to that. So in a spike, what do you do? So we find these opportunities to help those teams really get through that workload. And for that particular scenario, some of the teams are saying it's about 9 times faster now in terms of how they could process through that content and reply to the things that are relevant for them, right? One of the big aspects we've taken on AI at RAC is a safe aspect, because for me, I personally see there's lots of risk in terms of AI projects today when people don't understand what they're actually trying to solve for, what could be the sensitive information that they're using through those projects. And so we put a big emphasis on responsible and ethical use of AI. And we're picking projects that we know will have these outcomes for these people, but in a very, very safe and contained way. So I wouldn't say we're out there kind of like at the forefront of this stuff, but to have a model that's in production today is probably, leaps and bounds higher than where others would be, given the sensitive nature of the data that we also have. Because we've got we hold a lot of information for 1.4 million Western Australians in WA. We've got a huge responsibility on that data set. So laying those proper data foundations and security foundations is a big aspect of our rollout for AI. But equally, we have very distributed We've got a Copilot rollout using Microsoft through, so many business teams that are using it today for so many tasks in terms of their day-to-day, right? Like helping search and content, internal content, asking questions. So that's a big part. And then every application that we run, so from our HCM applications to marketing, they have embedded AI in those applications. And so we have a lot of teams using the AI that's embedded in those applications, right, to create content, create campaigns, create articles. And what we're also trying to do, and you referenced we are hiring an AI lead at the moment. Again, not a hugely technical focused role. Yes, knows enough of the technology and generative and has that curious mindset to keep learning, but really to help shore up those all those siloed projects that we have at RAC and create a community, create sharing opportunities, learning opportunities, right? What works in one area? How do I apply it in a different area? From very simple things right up to the more complex aspects of what we do. And the opportunities are boundless. Like we've got so many opportunities to grow AI at RAC. And this is one way of helping to just shore up those activities, manage things, work within the constraints that we have, pick the things that are safe, pick the things that have business value attached to them, and then help business teams roll out those initiatives in a safe way.
Understood. You mentioned safe AI. For the data analyst, data engineer, data scientist starting to dabble in AI, what do you recommend they should be doing in order to act safely within the business, whether it's adhering to the policy that's in place or looking at the DMBOK framework? What would you recommend?
Yeah, I guess, look, I mean, ultimately, I always find this, particularly for engineers and analysts, it's a little bit of common sense, right? If I'm working with a data set that I know has, a lot of deep information about people and maybe their finances or their health information, the first question I ask myself is, do I actually need it, right? Do I actually need this data for the role that I'm about to perform? Because for me, 99% of analytics use cases actually do not need your first name, your last name, your deep, information. Like there are use cases for that, but most of those use cases they're not required, right? So one key aspect is don't use the data if you don't need it. Why do you even have access to it if it's not useful, right? In fact, it's just adding to the risk if things go wrong. The next thing is then where I have certain tools, right, and the proliferation of AI tools that are there and new things coming up all the time, all businesses will have policies against usage of those things. RAC do too, and we all have to go through an information handling course, and we all have aspects we use in terms of safe, usage of the data. Where am I uploading this stuff to? If I've got an AI tool that's in the cloud somewhere, and we don't quite know where that data is stored or how it's kept, and once it's there, it's kind of gone. You lose control over those things. So work within the confines of your company. We've got Copilot launched there in the business for that reason, right? Because we can guarantee within our environment and our contract with Microsoft and all the security that we've set up is we know that those practices are going to be safe. And even within our data analytics environment, we're trialing a lot within Fabric at the moment. We're creating, really safe zones where, that data can't effectively leave that particular framework. But equally, we do a lot of obfuscation in the background. We do a lot of, redaction of personally sensitive material because we don't want to proliferate those problems. So as an analyst, use some common judgment in terms of, should I have access to this? Is it really useful for the problem that I'm trying to solve? And if it's not, don't use it.
Don't pull in every single data point you have just for the sake of it.
Yeah, I mean, data people are hoarders. I guess at the end of the day, we like more. We like all forms of data and all forms of history around that data. But, when it comes to sensitive data about others, we have a huge responsibility. And that is quite personal, right? Like it's up to every one of us in the community to ensure those safe practices are adhered to.
Understood. Bobby, last question. The aspiring to Perth data folk, the aspiring GM of data and analytics that wants to be there, what are 3 points of advice you'd give to a growing, aspiring or senior data analyst out there?
That's a great question. I think in my experience, like you're a senior for a reason. It means you've built your technical skills. You've got, you've already built your ability to actually come and present some ideas and, maybe influence some outcomes, right? To then make the step up is how do you, and this is a huge personal aspect of mine, how do I help others do the same? What is my role in helping, mentoring them and lead them into developing those capabilities? Because I'm a big believer in developing others. And so, leading and developing a team is about providing those development opportunities, learning those outcomes. So finding those opportunities of how I can go and mentor someone or help develop them and lead them in terms of their own aspect of what they do is a key step up from being a really good senior analyst but then influencing others to develop the same capability that you have, right? That's very team specific. And then obviously there's the operational aspects in terms of risk management and handling your resources and doing all of that in terms of operational aspects of the team. Another key one is how do I connect across my network, right? Both internally in the business and externally, to learn, to share ideas, to bring those problems back into the team to help solve, right? And then also managing upwards. How do I then influence strategic aspects of the business, influence outcomes, being able to show how my skills can help and the team skills can help actually, unlock those opportunities for the business is another key aspect of, growing and maintaining a data analytics function. And all through that, you'll note that I haven't said manage the technology, develop things, because that changes all the time. It is just yet another operation aspect that you need to manage, right? But having a curious mindset, being able to connect your ideas to business problems, influencing and, really engaging with your stakeholders, winning with the team, developing that skill set, is what I see as the gap from being a really good senior into leading a function today.
I love that. Help others, learn from others, and then eventually influence others. Correct. As well. Yeah. Bobby Patel, 5th Industry Inner Join podcast. It has been a pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Douglas. Thank you for having me. And I look forward to hearing a lot more and learning from the other podcasts.